And we're live for the first time. First appearance on AustroThomism. We have at No Authority. What do you want to go by on the podcast?
You can call me Connor. I threw the Twitter handle there, but yeah, I'm not really anonymous. I'm Connor Mortel.
Connor, thanks for coming on. And also happy to have you be a part of the AustroThomism crew because you're on the articles, you're on the homepage now. It's great to have you.
I literally could not be more excited. I love this project you've gotten started. I think it's freaking awesome.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. It's crazy to see how it started. I put up a post on Twitter that, hey, are there any other Catholic like libertarian people who want to start a website? And then like 4 people commented. I'm like, great, we got a website. Let's do it.
Well, it's so funny because I literally started following it just because you kept tweeting back and forth with some of my Mises U classmates, and I was like, oh, who is this guy? And I was like, oh man, he's Catholic and has this awesome site going.
Yeah, there's a lot of great. I wish the guy I was at Mises U or going to Mises U because there's so many cool people I've met online who all met up there apparently. Like Sammy, we put from the Sensory U, Marcel. I'm like, these all sound like really awesome people. It'd be really fun to actually meet you guys one day. But
oh yeah, it's if you ever can make it out there, it's the best event of the year. It's incredible, and like you said, some of the particular ones you've talked with are some of the best. Like Sammy was literally the best of all of us and won the oral exams that we have at the end of the week. I mean, Sammy was freaking incredible. Kid's a genius.
He's a smart
Marcel
guy.
was one of the fellows. He's a genius, and I don't need to tell you, repeal the 20th century. I mean, he knows what he's freaking talking about. There are some great guys over there.
Yeah, I'm doing a live reading of Wasp Strategy for the Right, and he always brings up an obscure point about some political history point that I didn't know about, like Straussian stuff. He just brings up obscure things. I'm like, how do you know all this? How much time do you devote to this?
I said that probably 50 times over the course of the week at Mises U. I was like, how did you learn that?
A lot of great people. So we're going to be doing, anybody listen, we're going to be doing live readings of the recent articles that Connor here has published. He published 2 recently. He published The Church Should Bar More Partisans, and then Do You Hate the State We're Visited? I have to say, while I love the first one, Do You Hate the State We're Visited is incredible. I absolutely love it. It's succinct and it's absolutely perfect. I think I've already said it like 3 times. I saw somebody post about what's his name, Paleo DOP, the guy who ran for county in Indiana. He posted about no, Ross, I don't hate lefts. I don't just say I hate the left. And I posted the article like, here you go. Is an example of that because it is super useful today, especially.
Well, thank you very much. I'd kind of been thinking of wanting to write it for your site for a couple of weeks. Someone had said something like that, and it got me thinking that, and I wanted to write something, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. And finally, what was it, last night or 2 nights ago, whatever night it was that I got that out, I was like, oh my God, finally have some time. I'm going to sit this down and write this out because it's exactly that, where it's like, look, Do You Hate the State's a good starting point, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so which one do you want to read first? Do you want to start off with The Church Should Bar More Partisans, or Do You Hate the State We're Visited?
I'll follow your lead. It's your show. Which one do you want to go with?
Let's start with the classic one and move into the political one. Let's go that way. Let me just stay on the screen real quick. Yep. Okay, so if you can you read it from here? Do you have it on your screen, or how do you want to do it? Do you want to read it or want me to read it?
I have got it on my screen. I can absolutely read it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. And just stop me if you want to, or I'll just keep reading whatever is good for you. So I'll go with this. It's The Church Should Bar More Politicians. In a Bible study in undergrad, I was first presented with the argument of the 5 non-negotiables, the 5 things that under no circumstances a Catholic can vote for or support. The topic of that day's Bible study was abortion, and the 5 non-negotiables had been taught as someone suggested that anyone who votes for a pro-abortion candidate has committed a grave sin. At that moment, I found it somewhat silly. I was yet to have my experience as an Austrian. However, from a gut instinct, I found this explanation lacking. I knew so many good Catholics who voted, and by the very nature of voting, had to vote for someone who supported at least one of these non-negotiables. In our current system, where a vote is for an entire basket of policies wrapped up into one person, this struck me as somewhat unavoidable. Personally, I don't vote, but I simply couldn't bring myself to act as though so many good Catholics were not anymore, simply because they had voted for a candidate that came with evil beliefs. As I began to read into the Austro-libertarian world, I found myself reading No Treason, The Constitution of No Authority by Lysander Spooner. and this gut instinct had words put to it. Spooner claims that there being no legal proof of any man's intentions in voting, we can only conjecture them. In his example, he demonstrated that a vote is not inherently casting support in one individual, but rather that a voter may simply see that one option is less evil and is doing what is in his or her little power to avoid the more evil past. We could not bar an individual from receiving communion or go as far as excommunication over a vote that supported a candidate who had one immoral and perhaps unpopular politically, so unlikely to happen, in order to prevent an opposing candidate who had far more evil views that he was likely to get pushed through. The same point can be made from a Thomistic perspective. In explaining the existence of evil in Summa Theologica, St. Thomas Aquinas explained that if evil were completely excluded from things, much good would be rendered impossible. This hypothetical voter is forced into the position of having evil completely excluded from his actions and thus being handcuffed from doing good to stop the far more evil candidate. If the voter engages in evil, as Aquinas would say, per accidens, this is certainly not to be celebrated. However, it is challenging to say that it makes them diametrically opposed to the church. This context brings us to the issue of today. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone has barred Nancy Pelosi from receiving communion in light of her very public and very evil stance on abortion. This has been gaining traction among many other bishops as they line up in defense of the San Francisco Archbishop's actions. In the situation laid out above, with a voter deciding between two baskets of policies, we are unable to definitively address their intentions, and as a result, only God can see if what they've done was evil. However, the situation changes completely when addressing elected officials. We no longer are looking at the intentions behind secret ballots, looking at dozens of choices all wrapped up into one. In the case of politicians, we can see vote by vote what they stand for, and often they'll explain why they stand for it. As a result, Archbishop Cordileone was entirely justified in his action to ban someone who has taken a blatant pro-abortion stand. The next step for the church should be not just to support Archbishop Cordileone in his barring of Pelosi, but actively taking this to its logical conclusion. Every public official who has taken a public stance or has explicitly voted one way or another in favor of abortion should be barred. Additionally, there's absolutely no reason to stop there. Run down every issue that is detrimental to the teachings of the church and bar all politicians who have voted for such issues. After abortion, go to war, go to any number of sinful, evil actions that can be clearly isolated to that individual and to their human actions taken to support actions, and bar anyone who does so. For too long, individuals who actively push for any number of variants of mass murder have used the title of Catholic to act as a better person in campaign season, and that has to be taken from them.
Let's stop there for a moment.
Absolutely.
That's one thing. We watched in some old clips of Nancy Pelosi, and she was quoting Saint Augustine, because Augustine didn't believe life began in like 3 months, and was trying to Saint Augustine justify her pro-abortion stance. Like it was the weirdest thing I ever saw.
It's unreal, and they do that all the time. I can't remember who it was. I mean, it was someone. I want to say it was Biden, but it was someone recently who was using a quote from the Bible about feeding the poor and the hungry, and that's why we should send support to Ukraine. I was like, dear Lord, these are completely like they jump at where they'll pretend to be Catholic where it's convenient, and it's giving them a lot of leeway where we kind of let them be Catholic and have these little things, and we say nothing. We've got to like Matt Brad says, when somebody finally stands up against that, we have to freaking celebrate it, because nobody ever stands up against it when people say those things.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous how it's not only bad for the person who is claiming to be Catholic. This is bad for the show. This is a sinful action. Not only do we worry about the person, but as a whole, the Pelosi quote Augustine how whether a sin is stored in the bars. Thank you, Belkoff. But it's even one. I don't know what's worse, is the person putting their soul in jeopardy by doing these evil acts and voting for these evil things, or the fact that they pass it out as, well, I'm Catholic, so I'm permitted to do these kind of things, making entire church and other Catholics look bad. I don't know how many people I've talked to who are like Protestant types who say, "Oh, all you Catholics are liberals," because they point to like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, and I'm
Well,
like,
yeah.
it's like most Catholics I know are monarchists, dude. It's like I don't know what you're getting your information from. These people who are claiming to be Catholic, and I highly doubt or anything Catholic outside of the political power it gives them, only shouldn't be using the term Catholic.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, the Archbishop stood up and said, look, this is absolutely not Catholic. You don't get to use this in next campaign, run as a Catholic. Every step you take is diametrically opposed to what we do. We can't support that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on. Where were we at? We were at
this last paragraph here.
Here we go.
Lastly, we must remember not to do this with a vengeful heart. While no individual acting for mass murder deserves to brag about being Catholic and is in no spiritual shape to receive communion, that does not mean we should celebrate their loss. We should not do this to destroy enemies. Rather, we must remember, as Matt Fradd has said, the point of barring someone from receiving Holy Communion or of excommunication is medicinal. This would not be an attack on all these politicians. Rather, it'd be a wake-up call. We'd be telling them that what they're doing is evil and calling them to confess, repent, and come back to the church. If we really were to go down the list, barring every person engaging in policy diametrically opposed to Catholicism, then we should also say a Hail Mary for each and every one of them and call them back in love.
Yeah, I think that last part here is very important. Like a lot of people I've talked to are seeing this seeing the barring of receiving Holy Communion has basically excommunicated, and that the church is aggressive, saying, "Oh, see, in Catholicism, when you sin and it's public, they just bar you from being a part of their religion." Like that's not how that works. That's not how that works.
I wrote that last paragraph a lot, honestly, just for myself, not even for the site. I was like, look, anybody reading this knows this. I needed my own reminder because it's really easy to start seeing this happening and seeing, somebody awful like Nancy Pelosi get taken down a peg and get a little vengeful and celebrate the loss, when in reality, you need to remember, look, what we want is for her to see this and say, oh my God, what I've done is wrong. Let me confess, let me come back. Of course, since this is written, I think she's doubled down and tripled down. But
she went to another church and received communion. Went to another Catholic church and where she was at and received Holy Communion. Just absolutely despicable behavior. I mean, I feel sorry for her. I pray her soul is not in. She's putting her soul in mortal jeopardy. I pray she repents of that and gets out of that, but it doesn't seem likely, sadly.
Yeah, I remember when I was listening, I quoted Matt Fradd in that last paragraph, and when I was listening to that stream where he talked about it, he ended with saying a decade of the rosary for her, and I literally was out running when I did it, and I stopped mid-run and said a decade of the rosary. I said, I was like, man, like you said, you pray for her soul, but it's like, man, with her, it's tough to believe that she's coming back around, but you have to sit there and remind yourself, like, oh my God, this is not just to be vengeful. I'm gonna pray for her to come back.
Yeah.
And the same as I would if we started barring people en masse, I'd be praying for every one of them to come back, because that'd be the real end game of all of it.
Yeah, that would be to go. It's I had something I was gonna say, but I completely forgot what the train of thought was. I'll come back to me later. But this is something I think a lot of people need to how do I put this? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. I can't think of a good way to phrase it, so I'm gonna give you a moment. I can't. I lost it. It's one of those thoughts. You ever have those thoughts in your head? Like you feel it slipping away, and as you try to catch it, it slips farther back.
Yep, absolutely.
I need to start taking Thistle or something for this brain. Yeah. But yeah, that's absolutely. I really enjoyed the article. I'm glad you wrote it because it's something that people are kind of ignoring the medicinal side of what this is.
People are not completely ignoring the medicinal side. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's an important medicine that's needed in our society as a whole. It's been ignored for a long time, and I was watching Pints with Aquinas today with his most recent, not his most recent stream, but his most recent 3-hour episode. And I'm blanking on the guest's name.
It was a deacon, wasn't it?
But yes, it was a deacon. Yeah. And he was talking about. Oh my God! Now I'm losing my thought. I can't remember what I was going to quote him saying something, but now I'm on your page where I am losing that same thought. What?
Deacon Hayward Buck Silvers was his name. That's a great name, Hayward Buck Silvers. That is a awesome name.
It is an awesome name, but I can't remember. He had an awesome thought, and I just lost it. I'm sorry. I'm making for bad podcasting here.
It's all good.
Your lost thought with my bad lost thought.
It's all good. I will say one of the frustrating things of this whole situation has been the amount of people who say this isn't your job. Like, what was it? What's her name? She was Guinan in Star Trek. Whoopi Goldberg. She was on
my gosh,
saying like, this isn't your job. It's like, that literally is his job. This is literally the role of the priest.
By definition, his job. Absolutely. If it's not his job, I don't know who is it. Of course, Whoopi Goldberg always comes out with just the absolute most atrocious takes. The problem is people follow suit. I mean, she says this isn't your job, and the next day you open Twitter and it's trending that it's not his job. I mean, like, people really think that that's not it, and it's like we have to. That's what I was going to say. That's the deacon had been saying that following the sex scandals of the church kind of got neutered and wasn't talking out when things like this happened, and we're kind of afraid. And he was saying, finally, we're stepping out of that shadow, and we're not afraid to talk about these things anymore. Mm-hmm. And dear God, we need to be. It's in this time since that happened, and since the church has kind of been more quiet on things like this, that society has fallen to shreds left and right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're listening to Whoopi Goldberg for advice on what the church's job is. Yeah. And we need people standing out and saying, no, absolutely, it is the church's job. This is exactly what the church is here for.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's so easy to figure out what the Catholic Church believes. It's literally a catechism. If you want to know what the church's role is, it's so easy to learn what the priest's job is. And people today don't actually understand or know what the church is supposed to do or does or how it operates. And it's such easy access to information. You can, 10 minutes, you can figure out what you need to know about the church on a specific issue. And they're just not doing it. And then they're spouting off at the mouth and saying really stupid things. It's ridiculous.
I was chatting with a news page on Instagram called Meridian News. And I don't always agree, but he's freaking great. And he posts some great stuff just covering foreign policy and whatnot. But he sent me a message when I posted something or other about this, and he said the people love to do this where they'll act like the church came out of left field, just completely out of nowhere with a take like this. Because the church has been laying out exactly how they felt for thousands of years. There's the entire Bible. If that's not enough, there's the Catechism, and if that's not enough, there are countless numbers of books by various saints. And people will act like, oh my God, I can't believe that the church came out against abortion. It's like, no, this is obviously out in the open there. I can't believe you are going to sit here and pretend that the church had never mentioned abortion before this week and it just came up.
Abortion has been a saying since the people were taking flowers in ancient Rome.
Exactly.
And the church fathers wrote about it. It's like one of the earliest views of the church was like, hey, you shouldn't murder your baby in a room. That was known saying.
And then Nancy Pelosi will get barred and be like, oh my God, well, no one had ever brought it up before. I don't know what made you think this suddenly is wrong. Yeah. And this won't be the last time it happens. The next time that the church is in the public eye, they're going to act like the church's teachings are brand new.
Lord willing, the next time the church is in the public eye would be the banning of abortion or the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
I can only pray and hope because, dear Lord,
we need that. I would say I saw a great meme, and it was Joe Biden on the phone, and he says, "Yeah, they're absolutely buying the mince deploy. Yeah, we're gonna get abortion repealed soon. Okay, have a good day, Holy Father." And he hangs up the phone, and it's just, I love that we get a Catholic president who's like who's probably, I can't speak from personal experience, but he's probably not a great Catholic. I can say that from political views, and we get all the Catholic things we've been wanting to get done under him. It's hilarious.
I think you sent me that meme on Twitter. I literally, the first thing I did, so I was in a Christian fraternity in college, and literally the first thing I did out of that was pull up my old fraternity group chat and send it to them. I was like, this is hilarious.
Great meme.
It's exactly, it's like you said, Joe Biden memes have always been the best.
Always been
And
funny.
Joe Biden secret Catholic Pope employed memes are as good as they get.
Great. I feel sad when I look at Joe Biden because I don't think he wants to be there anymore either. But there's so many great memes from Joe Biden about like when he was a vice president for everything. He's always been the funniest person in politics.
He really has been.
Anything you want to add more before we move on to the next article?
I'm ready to move on to the next article.
Okay, let me just close this tab out and stay on the screen.
All right.
There we go. Can you see that?
Yep, I got it.
Wonderful. Okay, let's do it.
All right. Do You Hate the State? Revisited. Murray Rothbard wrote in 1977 that we should not judge individuals based on their pursuit of minarchism or anarchism, or by where their exact belief in the tax code minutia fall, but rather by one simple question: do you hate the state? He explained this saying, perhaps the word that best defines our distinction is radical. Radical in the sense of being in total root and branch opposition to the existing political system and to the state itself. Radical in the sense of having integrated intellectual opposition to the state with a gut hatred of its pervasive and organized system of crime and injustice. Radical in the sense of a deep commitment to the spirit of liberty and anti-statism that integrates reason and emotion, heart and soul. This has long been my litmus test for the views of others. I have always supported someone if their core interests were diametrically opposed to the state. However, recently, I've felt this needed to be reevaluated. When Rothbard wrote this in the 70s, he had no intention of telling people to mindlessly hate the state for the sole intent of hating the state. Rothbard hated for a very specific reason. Libertarians make no exception to the golden rule and provide no moral loophole, no double standard for government. That is, libertarians believe that murder is murder and does not become sanctified by reasons of state if committed by the government. We believe that theft is theft and does not become legitimate because organized robbers call their theft taxation. We believe that enslavement is enslavement even if the institution committing the act calls it conscription. In short, the key to libertarian theory is that it makes no exceptions in its universal ethic for government. This is the essence of why libertarians are supposed to hate the state, not for the sake of hating the state, but rather because the best of libertarianism treats all the same, and it just so happens that the state is the agent that acts in most opposition to natural law, and thus it is where libertarians focus their hate. For this reason, I am revisiting Rothbard's Do You Hate the State, and instead taking it to its next level, Do You Hate Evil? Rothbard looked down upon libertarians who merely arrived at the conviction that anarchism and competing private police forces are a better social and economic system than any other alternative, or more fully, that anarchism would be better than laissez-faire, which in turn is better than the current system. But there is no reason to stop there. Ask yourself further. Do you hate the state just because of a burning passion against the state and perhaps against authority? Or do you hate the state because you truly hate evil? This seems like a distinction without a difference, especially to a libertarian who would quickly argue that the state is the largest purveyor of evil there is. However, even just looking at recent news, it is easy to see libertarians being so blinded by pure hatred of the state that they fail to fight against or even actively fight on the side of evil. The obvious example of this is the abortion issue. On the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus website, it is stated that it's evident that for a healthier and more prosperous tomorrow, we need to move beyond issues like abortion that go nowhere and only continue to divide us. It is only then that we can actually start to fix some of the systemic problems associated with the United States.
Let's stop there for a little bit because I want to. There's a lot here, but there's a lot. The second half is really good too. But
go ahead.
The libertarian view on abortion, as opposed to the libertarian view of anti-war, it's the fact that they're like, oh, we have to be anti-war because it's the right thing to do, no matter how controversial or dividing that topic is among people on the left or on the right. But when it comes to abortion, they're like, nope, it's just too controversial. We can't touch it. I'm sorry, you're anarchist. Anarchism itself is controversial. You're already controversial. It makes no sense to me they wanted to take a stand on this.
And it's so funny because it'll be, and when it comes to this Catholic group of guys on Twitter here that have been talking out against the Mises Caucus and their stance on abortion, I actually am still a member of the Mises Caucus. I think I'm still paying dues and whatnot. I love a lot of Mises Caucus guys, but ever since this abortion thing came up, I've become very disillusioned because they'll be the first ones to criticize other libertarians for saying, why would you want to be pragmatic? We're libertarians from the get-go. We're already radical. There's no reason to cave into that. But then on this one issue, they've just been atrocious. They removed the plank in the well, I don't know if they were, assuming today went as they planned, they removed the plank saying that the Libertarian Party doesn't take a stand on abortion, it's a personal decision, and replaced it with nothing. But nothing is just saying the Libertarian Party doesn't take a stand on abortion, it's a personal decision. It's literally taking a vague kind of pro-choice opinion and leaving it with nothing, which in and of itself is a vague kind of pro-choice opinion. I don't think anyone's been better on this than Andrew from Popular Liberty when he'll tweet that the pro-choice libertarians are almost less evil and are almost better because at least they think they're fighting for something and they're fighting for it. Whereas a lot of the Mises Caucus will be quick to say, oh my gosh, I'm as pro-life as anyone. I totally think it's killing babies. I just don't think it should be a federal issue. So instead, do nothing. Or when he'll tweet, if these babies had been killed in Yemen, you'd be pissed off. But when they're in the womb, who cares?
Yeah,
it's been something else seeing that.
Yeah, I have a lot of libertarian friends who are pro-life, a lot of great people who are pro-life libertarians, but they're very opposed to any law or regulation or anything. And it's very weird to me. It's like, this is murder, this is wrong, this is evil. But also, the state should, the state should outlaw murder because murder is wrong. But the state should outlaw abortion even though abortion is wrong. I don't get how they get hold that position and be the king of consistency like they claim to be.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish that thought.
Yeah. I want to say it's putting the hatred of the state above their moral views. It seems to me like they're like, yeah, they'd rather hate the state and be against the state and actually than do something more with the state.
Exactly. And I'll be the first. I totally get the impulse where you're a libertarian. Somebody says, should the state outlaw murder? And you can say, no, we've got private property, you've got self-defense, yada, yada, yada. Walter Block and Hoppe have written 1,000 books on it. We don't need to explain it. But at the end of the day, it is a completely different issue when it comes to a being that you created that is incapable of self-defense. And I posted on my Instagram story a few weeks ago, I said, look, guys, I want to be a pure, consistent anarchist. I want that very badly. But at the end of the day, I'm seeing babies killed and I'm not seeing a libertarian answer. Give me one and I will gladly agree with you because I do not want to have this position that there needs to be state involvement. I hate having that position. I pick that position over endorsing baby murder every single time. And every response I got, I mean, there were a couple okay responses, but the vast majority were, well, killing the baby is violating the NAP and therefore it's the libertarian position is to be pro-life. And I was like, oh, step two. Like, okay, how do you stop that? What is the libertarian answer to stop? I totally am in agreement that it's killing the baby. You don't need to convince me there. Or just so much of was Walter Block's evictionism. I was like, okay, that solved nothing for me. I was like, this is just using libertarian words to justify baby killing. I was like, that's gotten me nowhere. I am desperate for a libertarian answer, but until I find one, I can't pick being against the state when the against the state option is not being against the slaughter of children.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's that's one of the reasons I don't come to the anarchist much. I don't go by anarchist anymore because I do think like especially as most people, when you use the word anarchist, they just think you mean no laws. And why that means by anarchist, it means no laws, but you can have rules. I think there should be laws against things like, these like, here's a hot take. You don't really need laws against murder because everyone can critically agree, yeah, murder is wrong.
Yeah.
People can walk around that. People can walk with sensibility. Yeah, we all agree murder is wrong. When it comes to these more gray areas to the everyday person, like abortion or like these kind of things, so maybe we do need laws for those gray areas more than we need laws for obviously. You don't need laws for black and white issues. You need laws for the gray areas where people don't know how to. People can't figure out on their own how to properly act inside the area.
So I'm clinging to the titles of libertarian and abortion. Nah, dear Lord, libertarian and anarchist. And I don't particularly care what title someone uses for me. Whatever someone calls me, I'll say sure and move on with it. But if I have to describe myself to someone else, 9 times out of 10 it's libertarian, because 9 times out of 10 the average person hasn't even heard the word anarchist. It's short of a movie.
Yeah.
But I'll say a libertarian, I'll say an anarchist. I cling to those, and 99% of the way there, I'll agree with every issue along the way. But I'm not gonna cling to that title so much that I'll let it corrupt what I believe. If the title gets in the way of what's good and just, then I will gladly abandon what comes with that title.
Absolutely. Let's continue on. Let me bring it back up here.
Where was I?
You were at the right after the quote from the Mises Caucus on abortion.
Okay, perfect. There is no issue more important than abortion. Just as Rothbard fights against the use of euphemisms by replacing terms like war, conscription, and taxation with terms like mass murder, slavery, and robbery, it is important to remember that abortion is nothing more than the mass slaughter of babies. If presented with an issue such as war or the Federal Reserve, a libertarian would never say that because it gets divisive, we should move past it so we can fix other systemic problems. This is the outcome of hating the state more than hating evil. Ask yourself, the Federal Reserve is private, technically. If the state could end it, would you be okay with that? If the war in Yemen were conducted by a private army, would you still be violently opposed to it? And if so, then what excuse is there for not being hideously outraged by abortion simply because there is yet to exist a non-state means of eradicating this evil? This isn't to call the Mises Caucus evil. In fact, St. Thomas Aquinas regularly claimed that it isn't even possible for one's nature to be evil. Rather, evil occurs per accident due to corruptions in secondary causes. So at worst, my claim would be that they're striving for good and falling short. We must remember that God does nothing by accident, and these evils that we fight against have happened on purpose and for a reason. St. Thomas Aquinas explains that if evil were completely excluded from things, much good would be rendered impossible. This evil that they have allowed is in potency, but there is plenty of opportunity for them to move towards being good in act by one day taking a firm stand against this. While I deeply hate the state, having that as your core motivator leads to having corrupt motives from those intended in you by the first mover. Instead, we must look at our core principles of what we truly strive for and not allow for the privation of the good. No longer do I ask, do you hate the state, though I truly hope you do, but rather my litmus test is one level deeper. Do you hate evil?
Wonderful article. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you so much.
I think that really that's a much better question to ask. Is like, do you hate the state? Well, yeah, a lot of people hate the state for different reasons, but do you hate evil and you hate the state as an extension because it is doing evil things, or do you hate the state because it's a lot of anarchists I feel like hate the state because it's an authority and not because it's evil, and they conflate authority with evil inherently, which is why I think a lot of the Protestant anarchists really hate the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely, and it's quite frankly, I don't think different than anything Rothbard had been saying in his original article. It's just that it's been 50 years, just shy of 50 years since that article came out, and it's been within libertarian circles now, hating the state is a given, And they start to use that as a trick for making, I can never remember if thick or thin libertarianism is the one where it's, but they try and use it to make it big tent. Everyone who hates the state is on our team, yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, that is never what it was set out to be. It was saying in its first writing, it was actually written against David Friedman for being this very like,
utilitarian.
It was for gatekeeping libertarianism. It was saying, don't be utilitarianism. That's not libertarian. You need to hate it. They're out here killing children in, I don't know, Vietnam, wherever we were in the 70s. And now in 2020, we're in 5 or 6 wars, something, and the Mises Caucus and so many, and even non-Mises Caucus libertarians and party libertarians, all sorts of, are phenomenal on that. And they say the reason we hate the state is because they're killing children here. But then you get into other concepts where children are again being killed and people fall silent, and they've missed the point again. They're trying to avoid being divisive, which is just that utilitarian. That's more utilitarian than it's just campaigning. It's worse than Friedman had done that Rothbard had written against. It's, you need to recognize that the state should be hated because it's evil. But when the option is nothing against evil and the state is sitting there as a tool, well, evil needs to be fought where it can be fought. And if that's the way to do it, then that's the way to do it. And it was just as much with the shooting this week. You saw a lot of, I mean, obviously people on every side were hectic, but I'm going to call out the libertarians just because those are the people I respect. So when they get something wrong, I've got a hit there. You had so many libertarians coming to, oh, you people against gun laws, the real solution is X, Y, and Z, abolish public schools, abolish that, whatever. But first off, it's the old Pete Quinones quote, you're living in Ancapistan in your head. But second of all, even libertarians fall prey to the same thing of a liberal who tries to put a Band-Aid on a gash wound. Like, this is a horrible problem that occurred across the world for any number of reasons, and it's deeply rooted in our culture that's causing this. And these people who jump to have their 2-bit talking point on, like, it's when you see someone see children slaughtered and think, oh my God, I can go tweet about this, and their first reaction isn't like falling to their knees to say a rosary. You're seeing hating the state, hating gun control take precedence in your heart more than hating evil. Because it's these things we see are evil happening in the world, and jumping to Twitter is just showing that you want to hate the state more than anyone else.
Absolutely. I have nothing to add. Everything you just said 100% spot on. 100% agreement on you there. Again, super happy to have you a part of AustroThomism now. I think there's going to be a lot of great stuff coming out of this. This group's going to get bigger. Happy to have more people. We got you, Popular Liberties now involved. We got more people joining in. More people sending articles. It's exciting.
It's so funny having Popular Liberty involved and chatting with him more recently, because I honestly, until Roe v. Wade started looking like it was going to be overturned, I was on gung-ho Mises Caucus, which by default meant I hated Popular Liberty because he was so against it, and I could not wrap my head around why. And now, ever since I've started being open to the criticisms, every time I see him tweet something, I'm like, oh wow, he's 100% right about all of this. Yeah. He's exactly spot on.
I just same thing happened to me. I was in a Mises Caucus. I was like 6 months into anarchism, so I was like, oh, Libertarian Party, Mises Caucus, Dave Smith, let's go that route. And listening to Pete Quinones, so Bishop and Popular Liberty, like, oh yeah, no, that's not. Nah, I think I'm gonna jump ship. And I'm glad I did, honestly. I think I have better friends because of it. But it's been a very fun experience. And Andrew is just incredible. I mean, that guy, he knows so much shit. It's just really fun.
He knows a ridiculous amount. I'll say if my phone buzzes and I see it's his name there, I'm like, okay, I need to read this. Even if I'm not engaging, I need to read this conversation.
Same.
And I will say on top of it, like I've said a couple times here, I don't know that I've jumped ship to like I'm not engaging with that anymore. I've been very disillusioned recently, but I do wish them all the best. I hope they have I hope they prove me wrong time and time again. I really want to be wrong about what I'm saying. I just have yet to see a reason that I am.
Same. Like I'm happy that they're succeeding because it looks like they are, succeeding in getting the party taken over. I see Angela McCarter won today. Gus Smith will probably win tomorrow. I'm happy to see the people I like succeed. I'm happy to see people I hate lose. I just wish the people who were that good weren't wasting. In my opinion, I think they're wasting their time. But I really hope they are not subverted. Because like I saw that the Treasury guy went to Todd Hop again, or whatever his name is. And that guy's clearly is a progressive who thinks you can get progressive ends better through libertarian policies. And it's like,
I remember being a little shocked when I started seeing him be Mises Caucus because I remember feeling, I felt like it was like a Mandela effect. I was like, I remember him not being radical Misesian. And then one day I saw him tweeting about Mises Caucus and I felt like I was crazy. I was like, this came from nowhere, right? But yeah. And I remember it's exactly what you just said, is that they are really good minds over there in the Mises Caucus. And I remember I was talking to Tho Bishop at the Mises Institute event in Tampa back in, or not, Tampa, St. Petersburg was last fall. It was Tampa back in like January or February. And he was saying, and he tweets stuff like this all the time where I'll say, look, the reason I talk so much about the Mises Caucus is because these guys are so good and their talents are being wasted.
Yeah.
Like, I really think great things about that. And I'll complain about Dave Smith getting something wrong now and again. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone's done more for the cause of liberty, at least while I've been paying attention, than Dave Smith of drawing people in. But you start seeing him get involved in the Libertarian Party. And now every time he mentions Ron DeSantis, he said, oh, Ron DeSantis is great. I mean, I hate him for X, Y, and Z view. And quite frankly, I'm sure I do too. I don't even know his views on X, Y, and Z that I hate. But it's the popular liberty quote, people act their incentives. And when your plan is to run against Ron DeSantis in 4 years or 2 years now, even if you don't believe that you're going to win, your incentive is to say, this guy I'm opposing, I have to say bad things about him. And they start doing it. I'm like, look, at a certain point, I live in Florida. I have got nothing bad to say about Ron DeSantis.
Same here.
And I get the impulse to say bad things about it. If you pull up my name on the Mises Institute website, you can find an article I wrote a little over a year ago that's entitled Preemption is Bad Even When Ron DeSantis Did It. And I was complaining that Ron DeSantis made mask mandates illegal because, the counties should decide for themselves and localism and whatnot. But here I am a year later, and that might have been 2 years ago now. Dear Lord. Here I am 2 years later, and I look around Florida, and I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with how Ron DeSantis handled this. He did a good job. Yeah. And it's when you start having even great minds who are great on libertarian thought fall into the incentives of the Libertarian Party, they're going to act their incentives, and they're going to swing and miss every now and again.
Yeah. For a lot of people, their first red pill is the state is evil. But I think that's going to be the only red pill. The next red pill is to be, the state is the corporate arm of the state does exist, and the state can implement its rule through corporations, and libertarians would then defend those corporations for implementing the state's rule. I mean, if a state could have no mask mandates in place, and in Walmart and all these corporations consider the same mask mandate in fact those places that they're at, and I think we have to really view these corporations as this another arm of the state. And I think a lot of libertarians are getting to that point now where they're seeing that, but the good ones are. But there's still a lot of libertarians who are just it's a private company, bro. It's
absolutely. I wrote a piece for the Mises Institute's Power and Market blog when all the Ron DeSantis Disney stuff was going down. And I wrote two pieces. And one was, okay, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Disney was a private city, and it had the strongest borders of any city in the world. It had the best security of any city in the world. It had the best transportation of any city in the world. It had the best sanitation of any city in the world. This is why libertarians argue for privatization. Them as a private city were so good on all these issues. As libertarians, we want absolutely all cities to be Disney Corp, Walmart Corp, whatever it may be, and have these things, because when you have that option, that freedom of association, and you can bounce around and move with your feet and whatnot, you do end up with a better world. And then my other article was F all that. Disney was one step forward and two steps back. Using the state to shut down Disney is one step back and two steps forward, because they exist as an enemy to liberty in so many ways. And the fact that we want to have a private city does not mean that we should make one corporation that is actively opposed to what we want be the only one that's allowed to have a private city. That is in no way ends in a better world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we read both the articles. Any final things you want to say before you give your plugs?
I don't think I've got anything more to add. Just an absolute thank you very much for having me on the show. Like I said at the beginning, I freaking love this whole AustroThomism project you've started. I said that I go by any label I get given, but when I'm in an esoteric enough circle to understand, I use AustroThomism as my label. I mean, it's what I've been looking for a long time, and it feels like I finally found it.
Well, the credit for the name goes to Gold Guy on Twitter. He's actually right here in the chat. Dropping
Oh,
ends.
I love Gold Guy.
Yeah, great dude.
I was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was tied between naming it Paleotomism and AustroThomism, because I like paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian, but I figured Austrian kind of encompassed all of Austro-libertarianism, Austrian economics, and Thomism, and he convinced me. But
I like AustroThomism more. Yeah,
me too. He convinced me.
I've been very into the paleo strategy recently, but this summer I'm working I've told you I'm working as a research intern at the Mises Institute.
Nice.
Austrianism is what brought me to all of this. My first red pill was Economics in One Lesson, telling me to think about the unseen. So Austro got my attention much more than paleo would have. Yeah. But either way, I freaking love it.
Yeah, no, I think Austria definitely works better than paleo. Well, because really, AustroThomism, we have a Heincast, who I think he's just a regular, more anarchist type guy. You have Bokov, he's an anarchist, but also kind of like NRX. I'm more in the NRX camp. He's in the NRX camp. We have Andrew, who's like a Praxian, who has his own system.
Who is the Praxian?
Yeah. And so we got a lot of different. I just think like we're not strict on ideology. As long as you are right wing, we're happy to have you.
You're right wing and Catholic.
That's pretty much the only standards. Right wing Catholics. That's it.
Which, in all fairness, more and more becomes my standards for any political discussion I have anyway.
Same. Well, man, it's been a lot of fun. Oh, what can people find you at?
All right, so on Twitter, it's on the screen here. If you're watching on video, it's @_NoAuthority_. And that comes from my Instagram @ConstitutionOfNoAuthority, which is underscores instead of spaces. You can find me out of those places. And then you pull up the Mises Institute's website and type in Connor Mortell. You'll find most of what I've written, in addition to obviously the AustroThomism website at paleotomism.com.
Wonderful.
I've done a couple things on the Libertarian Institute and antiwar.com, but foreign policy is my weakness as a libertarian. We have the division of labor for a reason, and I let other people really take advantage of that. Most of my work's the Mises Institute, and then hopefully as time goes on, much more and more on AustroThomism.
Awesome. Looking forward to posting anything you send me. Well, guys, there's been another episode of AustroThomism live reading. Make sure you go to the website. It is currently under review. I'm trying to fix it. Bluehost sucks. I'm gonna probably have to pay a guy to fix it for me. But yeah, for now, just go to Twitter @AustroThomism on Twitter and like, comment, share, subscribe. Yeah, go to church.